Hi, and welcome to another edition of the Intentism podcast, where we interview people and discuss various themes about intention. We're very excited to have Sir Stephen Fry on because he's been not just a great intellect for many years and a national treasure, but he's also spoken quite openly about the problems with AI, particularly in the creative industries, in the fact that it seems to be creating quite good writing, poetry, artwork, music. And also, it's something we've been concerned about for a while or interested in this debate because AI, LLMs seem to be making output that is very good in some cases and certainly intelligent without being conscious. And it seems to be bypassing intention, certainly the intention we've often defined over the years. So it's something that intentists are very keen to debate. We asked him a couple of questions. He answered really only one in any detail. So I'll read that to you and then you can hear his response. So as AI generated creative content grows exponentially, there seems to be two main areas of concern. Firstly, the issue of authorship, since many writers and musicians are having their work scraped and used without their permission. Secondly, that intelligence without consciousness will never be able to produce profound work as it doesn't come from a place of human experience. Saying AI output is different since it regurgitates what's already out there may be problematic, since there is no creatio ex nihilo for anyone, but we stand on the shoulders of others. Our intensive art movement has always fought for the importance of the time, place, personal biography, and specifically the creator's intention in creating, interpreting, and appreciating creative works. What do you see as the main intrinsic problems in AI creativity? So, without further ado, have a listen to Sir Stephen Fry and enjoy. See you later.
Hello there. I'm doing this by speech rather than by writing, out of a mixture of indolence and preference, really. Generally, I mean, I love to write and I like to write things down, but they seem somehow more official and more certain. When I'm speaking, I can take ideas for a walk more. I'm trying to answer your questions. So let's look at the first one. As AI generated creative content grows exponentially, there seem to be two main areas of concern. Authorship, obviously, and that intelligence without consciousness will never be able to produce profound work. Well, yes, the issue of authorship, and one almost feels that ship has sailed, and there's very little one can do to get that toothpaste back into the tube, to mix metaphors. That bell has rung, etc. It's obviously annoying. There is some clawback going on in which rights are being retrospectively given back or paid off or whatever. And I suppose that will continue. Europe continues to be tougher than America. How long that will last, I don't know. I mean, the idea that you can have separate territories in a world of AI is getting more and more problematic. It's a bit like saying the oceans are different. There's only one water running around, and an alien wouldn't see that there's a difference between the Atlantic and the Indian Ocean, for example, or anything of that nature. And that seems to be likely true. Obviously, the different territories, the major different territories like China and so on, will have their Great Wall. But interestingly, in terms of danger of AI, China seems to be more aware of it and more open to controlling a reckless run towards AGI and possible ASI than the oligarchs in the United States appear to be. But that's not answering this particular question. Yes, you're talking about profound work. Intentism art movement has always fought for the importance of time, place, personal biography. That's true. That's only very recently true of art. It's a very modern idea, that a post-romantic idea of art, the biography and personal life and feeling and these kinds of things, that they're in any way part of it. For the longest period, art has been about attempting to find the truth of reality and to render it into a form which might be language in a poem or a novel later or in a drama. or it might be a plastic art like sculpture or painting. It might be visual, and it might reveal the truth of something in its sight. And the idea that it should be about the artist is appealing to us in the modern age because the modern and postmodern era has been built on the romantic idea and its ironies and its agonies. But it isn't necessarily what art is. So I think this is one of the things we have to do whenever looking at AI is we have to look at our own intelligence rather more than the machine intelligence to try and investigate what it might be. In the same way that when you're learning a language, say you're an English speaker and you're trying to learn German, it's really the most important hurdle you have to overcome is understanding English. So that when you have a phrase, like, I don't know, I could have done it, that's very peculiar to any other language. I could have done it. Could doesn't have an infinitive. You can't to could. So what verb is it? And do you mean you were able to do it? And when you say could you do something, that's asking someone to do it, not asking them if they're able to do it. Do you see what I mean? You have to just parse and parse and parse your own language in order to be able to translate it into another language. So if you say, I'm going to look at it tomorrow. You can't say that in German again, you see, because it's a progressive future, and so on. And similarly, we look at work and we look at what thinking goes on, and we forget to look at ourselves. You've done that in your question a bit. There's no creatio ex nihilo, however you like to pronounce your Latin. And really, if you look at machines and say, well, this is just Bayesian logic and neural nets and tokens and blah, blah, blah. Well, we don't know what our own brain is, and it's pretty Bayesian. I mean, almost everything we do is kind of excluding the unlikely, and all the cognitive tests that we do on things like, I don't know, visual illusions and mistakes that we make are usually based on the fact that we shortcut and leap to the next logical step, the most likely thing, the most likely word, the most likely image, the most likely outcome, the most likely threat around the corner is all kind of, if you like, Bayesian in that way. So the idea that their machine thinking is very different from ours is we just don't know because we don't know how we think. And I suppose I'd also say that the idea of basing anything we think about AI on how it is now is a big mistake. That's like looking at a little stream in Gloucestershire that is the beginnings of the River Thames, the source of it, and trying to say, well, I don't think it's that much of a big deal, that little rivulet, or it's not that impressive. You don't know what it's going to become. You don't know how it's going to turn out, and into the grand lady that sweeps into London with its bridges and its estuary, as it were. And we've never really quite seen, I don't think anybody standing in Carl Bentz's little garage in his horse, no, it wasn't a garage, it was his stables in 1895 when he was demonstrating an internal combustion engine would have predicted multi-story parking structures and motorways and roundabouts and commuter towns and the whole structure and everything of traffic and how our lives and work were changed by this little invention. And we just don't have the ability to see these things. We can see that it can be dangerous, and in that sense, we look to people like Stuart Hinton and Stuart Russell and Geoffrey Hinton and Bengio and others who seem to know the most about how this stuff works and are the most worried. But as you say, we can't unring the bell. And as far as creatives are concerned, there's Moravec's paradox, isn't there? The things we find easy, machines find difficult. and the things we find difficult, machines find easy. We can leave them to do the ordinating and the sorting and the retrieving of data. The extraordinary speed of which they can do that means that certainly clerical things, as I say, ordinateur is a great word for a computer, the French word for it, and the original ones, that's what they were. The beginnings of IBM, they were sorting. It was all about sorting and tabulating, and that's essentially what legal, paralegals do, and in a sense, it's what radiographers do, and radiologists to some extent. There's the data. They sort it and compare it and file it and do it at staggering speed in ways that a human can't, as in the same way that they do calculation at staggering speed in a way we can't. We're just not evolved to do that. But ask them to pick up a cup of coffee or something, and of course they're in real trouble. Or, as you say clearly in your questions, they don't have the experience of that we do of our particular organ senses and dimensions, and our feelings and our hurts and our guilts and our shames and our aspirations and all the things that centre around ourself. And one could add the word yet always at the end of any conversation about these things, because they develop into wetware, whether you start using proteins and electrolysis and other such things in a liquid base that you might as well call blood, and who knows what strange conjunctions of stem cells and genetic engineering, CRISPR and otherwise, will result in artificial intelligence that begin to approximate us much more closely. But for the moment and for our lifetimes, we can rely on the fact that they can't really do much in a garden. They can help design a garden, but they can't get down and dig and pick the roses and plant out and repot and dig in the manure and all those things. It would just be incredibly difficult to get machines to do that, and we can do that, and we expand out the horticultural image to everything like that, where we get down dirty into the granularity of our lives and our experiences and how we do that, and machines just can't do that. But they can do, and this is where it gets rather elitist if I say this. They can probably do fantasy and cheap fiction and erotic fiction of pornography and things like that. Things that are essentially formulaic and are a repetition of patterns that take no particular depth or insight to produce. And as I say, this becomes then elitist, that we privilege art as we perceive it, as we trained in the humanities, or if not trained in the humanities, at least with an interest and an excitement about what we consider to be the story of art over human history. And art, I'm including, of course, music as well as and poetry and sculpture and everything. We can see that high end is the least threatened at the moment. Of course, we can fool people. That's always been the case, though. There was that Australian gang who produced a poet. What was he called? I wish I could remember his name, Derek Mulligan or something like that. And they sent his poems, and they were kind of parodies of modernist poetry of the time, sort of post-Poundian poetry. And the magazines published him, and they got very red-faced and very angry about the fact that they thought this was a wonderful new poetic find. And similarly, it's been decades since musicologists have been fooled by music written by what we wouldn't even call AI back then, but just by computer programs. And indeed, that's a whole other subject, how AI is arrogated as a phrase when really you're just talking about automated algorithms and things like that. But nonetheless, that's another thing. So yes, the fact is, we will be fooled into thinking this is, this is a human product. But for me, and this is, an easy, privileged thing to say, it's the pleasure of doing and making that won't be denied me. Whether the market will be the same is another question, and I've already had my life, so I don't, I won't suffer from that way. But maybe the future generations will, because It will just be a more niche thing to be human. But you know, young people are not idiots, and they will quickly see what's lame about AI and generative AI and its products, and one can see a real return for real sort of the earthy things. And listen, I've taken far too long, and you must be bored rigid. But anyway, that's a vague kind of answer to things, is it? I don't know. I hope so. Bye bye.